So, I died. No drama, no light at the tunnel nonsense, just me, 61 years old, face planted into a pile of physics textbooks. We're talking quantum thermodynamics and medieval metalworking, basically just another nerd out Tuesday for a guy like me. My heart just quit. 1 second I'm crunching numbers on nitrogen-starved dirt, and then nothing. Lights out. Next thing I know, I'm feeling cold rock, smelling wet fur, and surrounded by people who definitely don't use deodorant. Looking up, I see two massive, heavy-browed faces staring back at me like they just saw a ghost. They weren't even scared, just totally floored, like I was some glitch in the matrix that wasn't supposed to exist. My new parents. Took me about 10 seconds for my brain to stop spinning and start clicking. It was all still there. Every formula, every decade of obsessive, weirdly specific research, my mind was fully intact and processing. Cave walls, furry skins, bone tools, no pottery, no fancy metal, just old-school hand axes, straight-up Paleolithic vibes. Stone Age, man. And I'm stuck in a newborn's body. I tried to move my arm. It flopped like a dead fish, and when I tried to speak, this pathetic, high-pitched squeak came out that even surprised me. This woman, my mom, I guess pulls me to her chest. At least it's warm. That's a win. While she held me, I started running an inventory. Old habit. When things go south, list your gear before making a move. No freakouts, no doom scrolling in my head, just pure data first. Here's what I had. The entire scientific history of humanity, physics, chemistry, engineering, all shoved into this tiny skull. Medicine, farming, building stuff, even how electricity works, I had the whole deck. But the catch? I literally couldn't even hold my own head up or take a leak without someone's help, which is humbling. I counted 18 people in the cave. My dad was built like a load-bearing wall, wide shoulders, scarred arms, and a face that's been broken twice. He's watching me with this intense, guarded vibe. Total hunter. I could tell by the dead animal hanging near the entrance. Plus, everyone else clearly follows his lead. I named him Kaido. He moves smooth but looks like he could snap you in half. Then there's the old guy by the fire, who's a completely different breed. He's skinny while everyone else is jacked, and he has fewer scars because he's clearly the brains of the operation. He's squinting at me and whispering to my dad. I marked him down as Goro, someone I need to watch closely. There's another guy with calluses on his fingers, but they aren't from hunting. He was fiddling with a piece of flint like a total pro, definitely the tribe's craftsman. I called him Tetsu. Then there's this sharp-eyed woman with clay on her hands. I named her Sora. No pots around yet, so she's probably just experimenting with the tech. Good. My mom? That's Haru. She's the only warm thing in this world of 18 primitives, one baby versus the Stone Age. I started mapping out my takeover while Haru hummed some simple, repetitive tune to me. My plan was simple. Start with the foundations and work my way out. You can't build a radio if you don't even have copper wire yet, right? No farms if people are still wandering, and no germ theory if they don't have a word for invisible. Step 1. Language. I wasn't just going to learn their talk, I was going to hack it, adding stuff like numbers and cause and effect. Step 2. Trust. Out here, the old guys and spirits run the show, and I'm just a kid in diapers. I had to make sure they thought my ideas were actually theirs so they wouldn't freak out. Step 3. Keep my mouth shut until I have something to show. I drifted off thinking about nitrogen fixation. 3 months in, and things got real one night. A hunter I called Burrow came limping back, looking absolutely wrecked and supported by 2 others. A wild boar had ripped a massive hole in his side with its tusk. It wasn't a kill shot yet, but the skin was already getting red and nasty. Goro jumped right in. He started this whole ritual with ash and chanting real old-school formal stuff. The tribe was watching like this was definitely going to work, but I knew better. That wound was going to get infected fast, but it was manageable if they had the right gear. I'd already spotted some medicinal moss about 300 meters east by the water. Super acidic, packed with iodine, straight-up germ-killing power. Legit, proven, used for centuries to fix wounds. Only problem? I was 3 months old. Couldn't exactly crawl to the creek, grab some moss, and drop a lecture on basic microbiology. But there was this dry clump of moss near the cave wall. Bedding. Probably. I reached for it with my weak-as-hell baby arms. Missed. Tried again. Haru saw the struggle and looked down. I pointed at the moss, then Burrow's nasty wound, then back at the moss again. She looked confused, then grabbed it. I let out a happy baby chirp and looked back at the injury. She just stared at me. Forever. Finally, she walked over and shoved that moss onto the hole in his leg. Goro snapped and barked something mean. Haru fired back, quiet but tough. They started beefing. The moss stayed put. 3 days later, fever gone. The wound wasn't all red and gross anymore. Eating by day 5, standing by day 7, back to work in 2 weeks. Easy. Total miracle by caveman standards. Goro stood over me that night, firelight hitting his thin face, just watching for a long time. Then he turned and addressed the crew. Super formal vibes, long pauses. This was a speech, not just some random chat. I didn't know the words yet. I got the gist, though. He told them some ancient spirit was inside me. Basically, I was a holy kid. Kaido listened, then gave me that intense look, like he was scouting a battlefield. Then, just one slow, heavy nod, my first taste of prehistoric politics. And yeah, he made the right call. Year 1 was pure torture for my brain. Seriously. I knew 12 ways to make ammonia from scratch. I knew exactly how engines worked, could have built a legit steam engine from my head alone, could have drawn the blueprints in the dirt and explained every tiny detail with my eyes shut, yet I couldn't say one real word until 14 months in. I didn't waste that time, though. While Haru carried me around the woods, I was basically building a mental dictionary. Every rock she touched, every sound she made, I filed it all away in my head. Their talk was way more complex than those old science books ever guessed. Legit linguistics. Tons of tones and markers for stuff they actually saw versus rumors. Grammar for finished versus interrupted actions. Deep stuff. Not just some cavemen grunting. These people built a language that actually worked for their world. Precise as hell. But they had 0 words for tomorrow. Anything over 5, or even why. No plan. Nothing. Those were the holes I had to fix. First word at 14 months? Fire. I dropped it super casual, too. Haru froze and dragged Kaido over. So I said it again. Mic drop. They gave each other that look parents get when their kid does something way too smart and totally creepy. Goro heard the news by sunset. He came to check me out. I stared right back. 0 words. He left. At 18 months, I was talking. By age 2, I was having basic chats. I kept it low-key so they wouldn't freak out. There is a speed for how kids learn here. I made sure to stay just a bit ahead, fast enough to be wow, but not call an exorcist. The big word came at 20 months. Kuru. I made it up. Short, catchy, and didn't sound like any of their other words. I tried it on Kaido while he sorted fish. Pointed at 1. Kuru for 2. Kuru for 3. Then I held up my fingers. He frowned and tried saying it back like a weird experiment. I nodded. They knew that sign by now. 1, 2, 3 fingers matching every time. He just sat there. Then he counted the fish using my new system. Got to 7, looked at me, and basically said, "There are 7. 7. He was vibe-checking the whole idea. I kept my face totally blank. Best moment of my life so far. Within 3 weeks, Kaido was counting everything on every hunt. 6 weeks later, the whole tribe was doing it. 3 months? They were actually planning 3-day trips. Pack food for 4 people. Routine stuff now, but before, impossible to even explain. Language hack took 2 years. I slipped 31 new ideas into their heads. No lectures, just vibes and use. Tomorrow. Later. Enough. Because. If. Plan. Remember. Teach. That last one? Huge. Absolutely the most important one. Tetsu caught me watching him work when I was like 18 months old. He was chipping at flint. Basic Stone Age tech. Controlled breaks. Decent edge, I guess. I just watched how he hit the stone. I'm just vibing, watching this dude Tetsu smash rocks. Absolute amateur hour. Man's wasting 20% of his rock supply on trash strikes. A little tilt here, maybe 15 degrees, and he'd have a clean, sharp edge with 0 extra effort. It's literal fracture mechanics, people. Simple math. Back in my old life, I'd actually read up on this experimental archaeology stuff. Bruh, I'd read 3 whole papers on this exact flex. But try explaining physics to an 18-month-old? Not gonna happen. No way I could talk my way out of this. So I just grabbed a rock. Tetsu's watching me like I'm weird. I'm the spirit kid, after all, and he's not exactly the type to get shook. He let me snag a little scrap piece he'd tossed. I flipped it around in my hands, which are still tiny and useless, by the way, and tapped it against the floor at what I hoped was the right angle. It split perfectly. Super thin, razor sharp, way better than his junk. Tetsu picked it up, flipped it, ran his thumb over it. He set it down, grabbed his own rock, and adjusted his strike without saying a single word. Didn't even look at me. It was like he was just thinking out loud through his hands. The next piece? Longer, cleaner, total win. He cranked out 4 more, and each one was a total masterpiece compared to his old stuff. Then he just went back to work and ignored me for the rest of the day. That night, I caught him explaining the new angle to one of the junior hunters. His discovery, his words, his big moment. He'd already convinced himself he'd thought of it. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Round 2 of the drama hit 6 months later, and tools weren't even the problem. By now, Tetsu was way more productive than anyone else in the tribe. His blades stayed sharp forever. His spears lasted 3 kills instead of 1. The hunters noticed. Kaido noticed. Everyone was talking. The catch? Tetsu started napping more and hunting less. He'd skip the group outings to sit and grind rocks with this crazy focus, making a mountain of tools nobody even asked for. The tribe was predictably salty. Two older hunters went crying to Kaido. In their minds, a guy who doesn't hunt is just a parasite. Honestly, it wasn't even personal. When there's 18 people barely surviving, everyone's got to pull their weight. It's just math. Kaido brought it up at the fire. Things got heated fast. I was 2.5. I'm chilling in Haru's lap, listening to everyone talk, and honestly, I'm following pretty much all of it now. Goro started yapping about how Tetsu's work was a gift from the spirits and we shouldn't question it. Two guys countered that spirit gifts don't feed you when the hunt fails. Tetsu just sat there being Tetsu. I waited for a gap. Then I spoke up. Just a question. Kids ask questions, right? It's what we do. Even the weird spirit kids. I looked at Kaido. If Tetsu makes 10 blades and those help 10 hunters kill better, who really fed the tribe? The hunters or Tetsu? Silence. I had to dumb it down even more. Haru helped me find the words. Kaido just stared at me. He looked at Tetsu's pile of blades, then back at the guys. He dropped his answer in 6 words. The blade that kills is worth the maker's life. Not exactly a law, but it worked. Just one guy, one fire, and one sentence. But Kaido's words have serious weight. From that night on, Tetsu's new gig was officially a thing. He hunted 2 days out of 5 and smashed rocks for the other 3. He gave all his blades to the group. He got a full cut of the meat. Boom. First ever division of labor. First trade. Goro tried to say Tetsu's work was holy, but he never argued the guy should get a free pass on helping the tribe. A 2-year-old literally just taught the whole village the difference between those two things in public. Goro was super quiet for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, Sora, the woman with clay all over her, had been my secret project for months. She wasn't a pro maker. She was just a gatherer, someone who prepared food, totally reliable and steady. But she was a low-key genius. I'd watch her mash wet clay into shapes and leave them by the fire just to see. She wasn't even trying to be deep. She was just bored and observant. Her stuff always crumbled because the fire was too wild and she didn't know about the air bubbles inside the clay. She was basically doing science experiments without a lab manual. I started hanging out near her while she worked. A 2-year-old watching people? Not sus at all. I'm the spirit kid. I watch everything. I grabbed a piece of her scrap clay and started working it between my hands. I pressed out the air bubbles systematically, like a material scientist would. Super slow, super thorough. I handed it back. She looked at it funny, copied my moves, then set it near the coals, not in them, just near them, and left it overnight. Next morning, no cracks. She turned it over, pressed it, and it held. Then she gave me a look. Meaning? Success. Staring contest with the flames. Sora's playing with fire, literally. She's testing the heat like a pro from a safe distance. 3 weeks in, she drops the first ceramic bowl ever. Palm-sized, super ugly, thick as hell, but guess what? It actually holds water. Holds it without a single leak for a full day. Then another. Unreal. Haru sees it and makes this wild sound. Suddenly, the whole squad pulls up to gawk. Goro gives the formal nod. Classic Goro thanking the dead ancestors for all our actual hard work. Always the spirits, never the humans. Sora doesn't care. She's already on bowl 2, moving double time. Factory mode, engaged. We have officially started the first production line. Sora's vibe in the tribe? Yeah, that's shifting fast. No announcement needed. I hit 3 years old. The tribe was basically unrecognizable, but nobody could quite put their finger on the why of it. Tetsu's out here making needles and bone scrapers. Straight up alien tech compared to the neighbors. The needles changed the game. I totally inceptioned him into bone working. Just subtle hints, you know? I dropped suggestions when the leaders weren't looking. Needles mean tight stitches. Better stitches, warmer clothes. Simple as that. Warm clothes mean kids don't die. That winter, 0 funerals. None. Usually, we lose a person or two to the frost and rot. I kept the receipts. I just didn't say a word. The tribe just felt like they'd finally survived. Goro throws a huge ceremony for the ancestors, thanking them for the good season. I'm just chilling on Haru's lap, watching the show and plotting. Next move. Base 10 math. Finger counting breaks after 20, and these big trade concepts I'm about to drop, they'll need real numbers. Then I passed out. Being 3 is exhausting, man. Long day. Winter number 2 was a beast. Not the cold, though we were cozy. Tetsu and Sora's gear held up. Sickness wasn't the vibe either. My moss hack was spreading. Small cuts didn't turn into death sentences anymore. But the real problem? We were out of food. The deer went north, and the woods were bone dry. 3 months of overhunting killed the flow. Everything just moved away from us. Daily haul was down to maybe 60% of what we actually needed to live. Not starving yet, but that slow burn hunger that makes everyone a total jerk. Everyone's looking at each other, doing the math. 2 kids didn't make it. Not hungry, just too weak to fight a cough that found them running on empty. One was 4. The other was 18 months. I'm 4. I see the math. And it absolutely sucks because I can't stop it with current tools. Logged it as, can't wait. Goro holds 3 ceremonies in like 3 weeks. Totally useless. The rituals were intense, super dramatic, and entirely ineffective. His eye talk to the gods rep was taking massive damage. You could see the doubt. It was getting harder to fix. He knew he was losing it. Every night by the fire, just stress thinking. The big idea hit me in spring, watching Kaido lead the hunters out in that basic group formation they always use. Everyone bunched up, chasing whatever moves. Total rookie mistake from a systems perspective. Applying all the pressure to one spot, it just scares the deer away and gives them a straight path out. No flanking, no traps, zero use of the land to win. I was waiting for the perfect moment. And yeah, this was it. I start sketching in the dirt while Kaido's still in sight. Making a scene, not being subtle. Stick in hand, I draw like Tetsu does when he's planning. A half circle first, then 3 dots inside to show the hunters. Marks on the sides, big arrow showing the squeeze. Then a big number 3 in the middle of the arc, my new counting system. The X marks the spot, the kill zone. Boru Kaido's brother sees me and squats down, calls his buddy over. They're staring at it like it's a blueprint. Serious faces only, I point to the woods. Draw the deer. Same scribble they use. I point back to my trap in the dirt. Do the surround them hand move I've been practicing for months. Close it in. Boru looks at the dirt, then the trees, then the dirt. Total focus. He says something quick to the other guy. His buddy makes this skeptical grunt. Boru shuts him down. He grabs a rock and drops it exactly on the left flank hunter. I dropped one right. He stuck the third atop the whole arc. We eyeballed the setup together. Then he stands, gathers the squad, and starts yapping about the play using my dirt drawing and his own tough guy talk. He botched the small stuff, but the big picture? Spot on. I kept my mouth shut. By sunset, we had absolutely crushed our old 3-day record. Kaido rolls in, stares at the meat mountain, then glares at Boru. Boru just points at my ground sketch by the cave mouth. Kaido stalks over, broods for a bit, then locks eyes with me. I did not blink. He grabs my stick and tweaks my sketch. Added a spotter I had totally missed. It plugged a hole he had spotted out in the wild. He hands the stick back. The man was right. I gave a nod. He made this weird noise, might have been a laugh if the guy actually possessed human emotions. The big reveal happened 3 weeks later. Goro calls a council because we are on a legendary winning streak best anyone can remember. Dude was not an idiot. He knew the vibe had shifted, so he tried to grab the mic before the story left him behind. He blathered on about ghost spirits blessing the boys and how holy rituals were the reason for all the extra stake, ranting about his precious ceremonial calendar. Honestly, it was a killer speech, well built. Total tearjerker, delivered like a pro who had been the tribe's spirit guy for 20 long years. People were actually crying. Then this old lady drops a truth bomb. She asks why things only got good once the kids started using the new plays. She was not being mean, just genuinely curious. The fire goes dead, silent. Goro starts his pitch, but I cut him off instantly. I am 4 years old. I keep it simple. That dirt drawing? That was all me. Boru used it. It worked. You guys want more? I can draw them. No attitude, just a straight-up offer from a toddler. Everyone looks at Goro. He looks at me. Dude has 2 choices. Either roll with my story and keep his dignity, or look like a loser arguing with a 4-year-old over some meat. He says, "The spirits guide the boy." I am like, "Sure, and the boy can draw more plays tomorrow." Kaido looks at Goro, then me, then back. He drops the hammer in that I am the boss voice. The kid talks at council, period. It was not like I was king yet. Kaido is way too cautious for that, and I am literally 4. But history was made first time a toddler ever got actual standing. Everyone got the vibe. Nobody said a word. Goro is doing the math right there. You could see his skinny face crunching the numbers. He switches to his big boss voice, acting like it is a gift he is giving. The kid speaks for ancestors now. I let him have the credit. He gets the fancy show. I get the real power. The next few weeks were chill and solid. Goro handles the ghosts, the funerals, and the tribal drama. His little kingdom stayed exactly the same. I did not care about that stuff, so I just stayed out of his way completely. Kaido is the muscle hunting, borders, and fighting. His call, his rules. I gave advice when asked and shut up when not. At 4 years old, I had standing the right to draw and propose. No command. Not yet. Just a voice they suddenly took seriously, even if they did not know why. Haru just kept feeding me and carrying me when I got tired. She treated me with that tired mom energy, loving her weird kid completely while having absolutely zero clue what was happening inside my head. Spring hits, and I am 5. Our extra meat lasted exactly 11 days before it turned into a nasty, rotting mess. We smoked it, stuffed our faces, and watched the rest go straight to the trash. 11 days of winning, then nothing. Total waste. I knew it would happen, but I had not built the gear to stop it yet. That ends today. I have got two big headaches. Keeping food and making food. Keeping food meant storage. We needed massive clay pots with lids to keep out the dampness and the rats. Sora was cranking out 8 pots a week, nowhere near enough. Hunting is a gamble, bad weather, limited distance, and it risks our top guys getting hurt every single day. Look, I needed a food supply that didn't literally walk away. Solve 2 problems with 1 move, right? I needed pros doing specialized work, and they needed a real job. The farm came first. I dragged Kaido down to the river one morning when the council wasn't being a total drag. Just us and the water. He's way more chill when there isn't a crowd. 4 years in, and I know his secret. Kaido thinks better when nobody's watching. I had a pocket full of wild grain seeds I'd been hoarding from the eastern meadow all week. I crouched down, poked a line in the mud with my finger, dropped the seeds in nice and even, then covered them. Kaido just watched. Total silence. I pointed at the seeds, flashed 10 fingers, then mimed the sun moving across the sky. 10 fingers 3 more times. 30 days. Then I doodled in the wet dirt. 1 seed goes in. A sprout pops up. Then boom, a whole head of grain. 1 becomes many. He squatted down to check my art. He's seen stuff grow back in the wild before. Any hunter has seen grass return after a fire or seedlings popping up where fruit rotted. He got the concept. What hadn't clicked was doing it on purpose, in a spot we chose, because we actually needed it. I saw the exact moment the light bulb went on. His face? Stone cold as usual. It never changes. But his breathing hitched for a second, the one tell I've cataloged over years of watching him think. He grabbed a seed, rolled it between his fingers, and planted his own little row right next to mine. We finished the rest of the planting together without saying a single word. I marked the spot with 3 rocks, the first keep-off sign in history. 34 days later, you could see green from 20 meters. Kaido brought 3 hunters to check it out without me even asking. He explained the whole magic trick in his own words. I just stood in the back and kept my mouth shut. By the end, 2 of them wanted their own garden spots. The farm was officially a thing. I drew up blueprints whenever they asked row spacing, water distance, which dirt color actually drained right. 6 weeks in, we had 3 plots covering maybe 400 square paces, not enough to feed the whole tribe. But it proved the point. Our first little harvest came 8 weeks after planting. Not a huge jackpot. The timing was totally off for a max yield and we definitely planted too late. But it was our grain, on our turf, available when we wanted it. No more waiting on the meadow. Inventory update. Our food safety net jumped from 11 days to about 6 weeks with the hunting and the new crops combined. The goal is months of backup. We aren't there yet. Sora needs a real workshop and an assistant. I pitched it to the council, real simple. Sora makes the jars. More jars mean more grain we can save. More grain means we don't starve during the winter. Sora needs help. Nobody could argue with that logic. Kaido picked 2 younger women, Mei and a quiet girl I called Nori, to work with Sora full-time. Neither of them had Sora's clay whisperer touch, but they were careful. Plus, they actually followed instructions. I spent 3 days hanging out with them, basically pretending I was just playing in the mud. I was actually teaching them the real tech through the fake story that I was just a 5-year-old messing around, getting rid of air bubbles, keeping walls even. I showed Sora how to check for thin spots and dry things slow. Sora's a total sponge. She took it all in and taught Mei and Nori in words they actually understood. By the end of the week, they were making jars that wouldn't look out of place in a university lab. Sturdy, watertight, and consistent. End of week 1 with 3 workers, 20 vessels. Sora's previous record alone? 8. I had Kaido pull in a hunter who's a natural at building stuff to help the clay crew with a new problem: lids. A jar without a lid is basically a buffet for bugs and mold. It loses half the point. Kin spent 2 days losing his mind because the lids wouldn't fit right. Then he cracked it. He added a little lip to the rim to hold the lid in place. I just watched. His fix was actually better than what I had in mind. Then Sora dropped the lamp on me, not planned. My roadmap was jars, then storage, then fire tools, then buildings. That was the order. But Sora figured it out herself. She was holding a little cup with a crack in the side. Trash bowl. Leaks like crazy. She dumped some animal grease in, stuck a skinny plant fiber in as a wick, and lit it. It burned for 4 hours straight. She brought it to me specifically. Legit. She knew I was the ideas guy worth showing new stuff to. Our vibe? Sora didn't see me as some ghost kid. She treated me like a partner, a real deal collaborator. Our bond grew low-key over the last year. It was worth way more than the tribe realized. I checked the lamp. Chunky wick. It was inhaling fuel way too fast. I pulled a thin thread from my wrap and showed her how to make it last. Skinny wick, same glow. Fuel lasts twice as long. She got it. Made 3 more lamps that afternoon with the fix. That night, the cave was lit up in 4 different spots for the first time in history. People moved different. Talked more. Worked late into the evening like they had deadlines. Tetsu finally had decent visibility. He pumped out 6 blades in the time he'd usually spend on 3. Look, nobody called it a revolution. To them, it was just grease in a cup with a string. But boom, the tribe's productive hours just spiked by 30%, and it cost us absolutely nothing. This tiny squad rolled up on a hot afternoon in early summer. 8 strangers, 3 adults, 3 big kids, and 2 little ones. They rolled in from the southwest, looking skinny and moving with that twitchy, don't-hit-me vibe of people who'd learned the hard way not to trust strangers. Lead guy had his hands up, totally non-threatening. Goro's first instinct? Boot them. He said it straight at the emergency fire meeting that evening. Not enough snacks for more mouths. Plus, strangers bring germs and drama. Total math fail. I called him out. I broke it down in the simplest numbers possible. We got 8 newcomers. 3 adults look fit. That's 3 extra hunters or workers ready to go right now. Our 6-week food stash can handle 8 extra people for 2 weeks while they get their act together. Harvest output next season is going to jump once we add all this extra muscle. 8 people equals 3 immediate grinders plus 5 future pros once those kids grow up. By day 60, we're actually in the green. Goro kept whining that strangers are sus, so I just asked him which of our current crew was actually born in this cave. Silence. He couldn't answer. Because the answer was 0. This tribe was built from randoms and pairs joining over the years. Every person at this fire was a stranger once. That silence was the useful kind. Kaido made the call. They stay for 10 days. If they grind, they stay longer. The lead guy, I named him Dai, was a tank, watchful. Clearly the group's muscle. He nodded instantly. He'd definitely been on the please let us in side of this math before. By day 3, Dai is hunting with Kaido's crew and matching the kills of guys who've lived here forever. Guy learns fast. Crazy memory. I filed that away. Among the newcomers was this woman, older than Haru. Her hands never stopped moving. Touching everything. Testing, feeling, judging materials, walls, river mud, spearwood. She was checking the specs of the world. Not a soldier. Not a hunter. She wasn't a fighter or a hunter. She was just checking the specs of the world with the habit of a total pro. I called her Kawa. Day 5, I sat by the clay beds to watch her work. She grabbed some raw mud and immediately started squashing out the air pockets. Same trick I taught Sora, but different. Faster, way more efficient. She figured it out on her own from a totally different angle. We locked eyes. We worked the clay together for a while without saying a word. Then she flexed, showed me a coiling method. Fast, even thickness. Total control. I'd heard about it in theory, sure, but seeing a master execute it in real life? Different world entirely. Her version totally smoked my mental model. I introduced her to Sora the next morning. Within a week, the two of them cooked up a hybrid technique that mashed their styles together. Boom, pottery output jumped 40% compared to before. Goro watched them fit in and kept his mouth shut. The 10-day limit passed unmentioned. Nobody reminded him. Another one of those useful silences. There's a copper stash at the river bend, 40 minutes away. I spotted it 8 months ago with Haru. Green-stained cliff above the water. Malachite seam running about 2 meters long. See that green crust on the rocks? Total jackpot. I marked the spot, measured the haul, and filed it away in my brain. But nah, not yet. I didn't have the heat to melt a popsicle, let alone metal. Plus, Tetsu didn't exactly trust my science vibes yet. I couldn't even produce enough fuel to keep the project alive. But now, I had the trifecta. Also, I was literally 7 years old. Our squad was 26 people deep. Kin finished the grain shed 12 days early because the dude is a straight-up beast. He kept wrecking my predictions in the best way possible. Eventually, I just started baking his overachiever status into my math as a constant. The fields were popping. The pottery shop was humming. Those lamps we made? Total game changer for our daily grind in ways we were still figuring out. It was time for the heavy metal. I dragged Tetsu to the river when the sun was hitting just right. No hype needed. I just pointed at the green-tinted cliff. He just stared for a sec. Then he grabs a rock, flips it, scratches the green stuff with his nail, and even sniffs it. He gave me the look. I whipped out a sketch I'd done on this flat clay slab Sora made for me. She knew the drill. Honestly, Sora realized months back that my brain works better with pictures, so she just started cranking these out without even being asked. Legend. The drawing was simple. Rock goes in the clay box. Fire goes underneath. Liquid metal leaks out the bottom into a mold. Tetsu locked in. He'd seen the shiny stuff before. Everyone had. Usually just random copper bits found in the dirt, hammered into jewelry while cold. Basic stuff. Smacking cold metal is one thing. but turning literal rock into liquid and pouring it, that is some wizard-level insanity. He poked the fire icon, the rock, and then the puddle at the bottom of the sketch. His face was basically saying, "You for real right now?" I just nodded. No cap. I could see him building the whole thing in his head. His hands were twitching like he was already touching the material. "Show me the box," he said. "It took us 11 days to build that furnace. Imagine a clay igloo, totally sealed except for a hole at the bottom and a chimney on top. Standard updraft kiln vibes. It'd get hot enough for copper if we kept the fuel pumping. The air was the real bottleneck. A lazy fire wasn't going to cut it. We needed forced air. Big time. Ken actually fixed the bellows situation before I even opened my mouth. I was ready to explain the whole squeezy airbag thing, but Ken was already watching my sketches like a hawk. He just grabbed 2 pieces of leather and started testing the stretch. Dude already knew the problem and was working the solution. He had the first version working in just 2 days. Leather on wood, a bone nozzle, and a stone valve that didn't suck air back in. Ugly? Yeah. Did it work? Absolutely. I checked the blast with some dry grass to see the wind path. That grass bent like it was in a hurricane. Plenty of power. Tetsu just watched, silent as a grave. Then he grunts. "Needs more clay." He held up his fingers to show the thickness. Like, double what I planned. Smart move. Thicker walls mean it stays hot and doesn't leak heat. My math was okay, but his version was elite. I fixed the drawing on the spot. Tetsu actually smiled. Sora saw it from across the yard and gave me the "what just happened?" Look, 14 days in, we went for it. Smelting day. Fuel choice? Charcoal, not wood. We'd been cooking charcoal for 3 weeks. Tetsu learned the burn it under dirt trick in like 5 minutes once I showed him. Charcoal burns way hotter and cleaner. This wasn't a maybe, it was a must-have. Copper melts at 1085 degrees. Good luck hitting that with a basic campfire. We had 40 kilograms of charcoal ready enough for the run plus 15% extra. We loaded 12 kilos of ore, expecting 20% return since it was our first time. That's about 2 kilograms of usable copper. Enough for maybe 4 to 6 small tools. Kin was on the bellows, Tetsu was handling the rocks. I'd schooled him on how the flame color tells the temp using that same clay tablet from before. Black smoke? Garbage airflow. Not enough oxygen. Orange is fine. White hot orange? That's the sweet spot. He was locked in, listening like his life depended on it. We sparked it at dawn. 3 hours in, and honestly, nothing was happening yet. The dome was just soaking up the heat. Ken was pumping those bellows like a beast, hitting a rhythm so perfect I actually had time to max out the airflow. 12 pumps a minute, totally steady pressure. Dude's got pipes for days. He's been out here building stuff with those arms for 2 years. 4 hours in, and boom, the exhaust goes bright orange. Tetsu didn't say a word. He just kept adding stuff. Hour 5, and liquid copper starts oozing from the furnace base. Tetsu watched it hit the clay mold we prepped, just a basic bar, nothing fancy, to check the quality. The metal was shiny, clean, and flowing just like pure water. He got down low, faced right in front of the tap hole, and just stared at it forever without saying a single thing. Then he whispers this one word that means, like, a miracle, but also finally. The bar took 2 hours to cool down. Tetsu popped it out, weighed just under 2 kilograms. Higher than my math predicted, meaning the air was actually better than the surface stuff let on. He's holding the thing in both hands, flips it over, digs his thumbnail in. Soft. Easy to work with. Way more responsive than stone ever dreamed of being. He makes this tiny noise, his "this is actually dope" sound. I told him to take the rest of the day and just play with it. By sunset, he'd cooked up a blade way sharper than any flint junk he'd ever touched in his life. This thing holds an edge 3 times longer and you can actually sharpen it. He held it up in the light, and the whole shop went dead quiet. Tetsu owned the whole process in 8 days. By week 2, he was running the smelt solo, no babysitting required. Checking heat by the smoke color. Managing the fuel by straight-up vibes, calibrated against the clay tablets I wrote out for him. Adjusting the rhythm with Ken using this secret hand signal system they totally made up between themselves. His efficiency jumped from 20% to 31% by the 4th run. He even figured out a better way to pack the ore, something I totally missed. I logged the win, did the math, and bumped my forecast. Copper gear was in full production by the end of week 2. 6 spearheads, plus 2 awls for leather work that Kawa specifically asked for. Those awls, they actually made Kawa laugh. Just a quick, happy sound when she tested them on some hide. She'd been struggling with bone tools for 2 years. Huge difference. The tin? That was all Kawa. She'd been with us for 8 months. Without anyone even asking, she basically became the tribe's MVP for materials. Anything that wasn't stone or clay. Wood, fiber, hide, everything. And now metal. She started studying it with that same surgical touch, and let's see what happens attitude she brings to every single job. One morning during the 3rd week of the copper grind, She rolls up to the shop carrying this heavy gray rock. Turns out she'd been lugging it around for days, just waiting for the perfect moment. She plops it on my desk and stares. I look at it. Cassiterite. Tin ore. I hadn't even told her what to look for. She found the stuff all on her own. She brought it because she knew weird rocks were the new hotness, and now she's waiting for my reaction. I pick it up way heavier than it looks. Slate gray, dense as hell, texture's perfect. I put it down and sketched 2 bars on a clay tablet, marked one copper-colored, marked the other gray for the new rock, drew them merging into a 3rd bar, wrote harder, stronger next to it in our shorthand. Kawa just studied the drawing for a second. Then she goes, I know where there's more. She brought back 11 kilograms over the next 3 days. She'd been hitting that deposit on her own time, which meant she totally got the point of my drawing immediately and moved on it before I even asked. Kawa's stock just went way up. First batch of bronze hit the furnace 16 days after she brought that tin ore. I went with a 90-10 copper-tin split, conservative. Easy to handle for a first try. Tetsu was definitely giving me the side eye about mixing them. He hit me with his classic polite but annoyed interrogation. Like, why fix what isn't broken? I was ready for that. I handed him the copper knife, the absolute best one he'd ever made. Still sharp after 2 weeks, but I'd been low-key scratching it every day with a hard stone just to have a baseline. 12 marks total. Then I handed him a chunk of the bronze. Not a tool, just a bar, and gave him the same stone. Told him to try and scratch it. He went for it, pressed hard, changed the angle, tried 3 times. All he got was one tiny line. He looks at the copper knife, then at the bronze, and just drops the stone. He goes, how much of that gray stuff we got? We fired up the first real bronze smelt that same afternoon. Result? Way harder than copper, kept its edge longer, and didn't get all banged up. Total game changer. Tetsu literally just finished grinding a spearhead and started wailing on some hardwood just to see if his bronze tech would snap like the old copper junk. It didn't. He stood up, tossed the spear point onto my workbench, and was like, we're out of greystone. Before he could even finish, Kawa had already dipped to go find more. 3 weeks after we started cranking out the bronze, these traders rolled up 4 guys moving fast with nothing but salt and dried fish strapped to wooden frames. They'd been hiking for 2 weeks straight from the coast just to find us. Apparently, the word on the river was that we were the crew with the fire pottery that doesn't crack when things get real. Goro wanted to do the whole formal greeting thing, but Kaido was low-key ready to treat them like ops until he checked their vibes. Me? I just wanted the intel they were carrying. We compromised Kaido, vetted them at the perimeter, decided they weren't a threat, and brought them to the fire. Goro did his big welcome to our home speech while I just sat there listening and waiting. They brought the salt straight up. We needed that salt for everything, preserving food, treating leather, the whole 9 yards. Plus, the dried fish was a nice break from our usual boring protein. They had 3 ceramic pots they'd picked up somewhere else, so I took a look to see the competition. Honestly, mid. The walls were way too thick and the firing was totally inconsistent. Our gear was light years ahead of anything else on the market. They wanted our pots so bad they were willing to trade salt and fish at a rate that was basically a steal for us. I threw them a curveball though. No pots yet. What I really wanted was the ultimate cheat code. A map. These guys travel everywhere, so they know the layout. I told them to draw what they'd seen, and they just stared at each other like I was crazy. Turns out, nobody had ever asked them for a map before because nobody else had a system to actually record that stuff. I grabbed a big clay tablet and a stylus and invited the oldest guy to show me how the river systems actually worked. He hesitated for a second. Information feels like a weird thing to sell compared to fish. I could see him trying to figure out the value. But then he just started sketching. He was at it for an hour, and when he finally stopped, I couldn't believe what we were looking at. A whole river network going all the way south to the ocean, plus 3 other tribes marked with simple little symbols. I figured out the traders' shorthand pretty fast. There were mountains to the east and some serious fire activity in the northeast that Dai had mentioned. There was this one symbol the trader used 3 times, and you could tell by his body language that it was a big deal. It wasn't just one group, it was a full-on confederation. Their territory was bigger than everything else on that map combined. I thanked the guys, agreed to swap 20 pots for the salt and fish, and then sat there staring at that map until my last lamp burned out. Look, the cave was a decent starter home. It was a solid natural shelter for 18 people just trying to get by, but it's a total mess for 26 people running a pottery business, a metal forge, grain storage, and a whole farm operation 300 meters away. It's a logistical nightmare that gets worse every single day. The forge by itself is a huge problem. Tetsu needs the furnace right next to the rocks and the fuel, and he needs some actual air so he doesn't pass out. Burning charcoal in an enclosed space is basically a death trap because of the carbon monoxide. We've been sticking the forge right at the cave entrance just to survive, which means the front door is constantly blocked. Trying to get in or out while he's working is awkward, annoying, and honestly kind of sketchy. Sora's pottery workshop needs flat ground and a steady breeze to dry the clay. But the cave floor is all jagged, and the airflow is basically whatever the wind feels like doing that day. Ken has been sleeping outside next to the grain shed he built because he doesn't trust the roof and wants to hear if it starts leaking at night. I mean, I love the dedication, but it sucks that our best builder is basically living 40 meters away from the rest of the squad. The cave stopped being a cozy home and turned into a massive roadblock for our progress. I brought the expansion plan to the council on a crisp autumn morning. I prepped for that meeting like my life depended on it. I hit them with the cold, hard numbers first. Then I tackled the but this is our home emotional stuff second. I even made sure Goro had a way to stay relevant so he didn't feel like I was stepping on his toes. The math doesn't lie, we need separate spots for the forge, the pottery, the food, and for sleeping that aren't all piled on top of each other. Right now, we're cramming 26 people and 3 businesses into 80 square paces. It's ridiculous. We need at least 300 square paces, ideally 500 to actually function. But people have feelings. The cave was home. It's the place the tribe has lived in for as long as anyone can remember. Leaving it feels like a total identity crisis. I told them straight up, we aren't quitting the cave. We're just leveling up. The cave stays as our inner sanctuary, the ultimate backup plan. We're building everything around it, moving beyond the walls and into the real world. And Goro, he gets to be the one to bless the new ground and make the whole thing official. I pitched the whole land grab as a massive flex for the tribe's ancestor, spirits claiming his turf, his party, his rules. Basically, I traded him a killer story for a deal. He didn't even blink before nodding, which meant he'd already been vibing on the same wavelength and was just stoked I laid it out so clean. Kaido just looks at me and goes, "So, where's the spot?" I whipped out the clay tablet I'd been grinding on for 3 weeks. Ken stared at that settlement layout for a hot minute, totally silent. I'd mapped the whole thing out exactly how my brain works. Use the cave as the anchor, set the palisade wall as the limit, and organize everything by what it actually does. Put the forge on the northeast side so the smoke doesn't choke everyone in their sleep, plus it's right by the water. Ceramic shop goes on the southeast. Why? Because the light is straight up gorgeous there all day. Food goes in the middle. We're talking elevated floors, totally sealed. Then put the sleeping quarters along the west wall. Left a big open space in the center for fires and hanging out. The main gate faces south widest path, clear view, no surprises. Added a smaller back door up north for quick water runs. Both gates locked down tight. The wall? 3 meters high, pointy as hell, and buried deep so nobody can just push it over. The whole perimeter was 150 paces. Building that beast was going to take something like 400 heavy timber poles. Every single one had to be cut, stripped, and sharpened. Kin just grabbed the stylus and made 2 quick changes without even asking. First, he tilted the bottom of the wall outward, pointing away from the camp. I'd originally drawn it straight up and down, but his way meant if some idiot tried to climb it, they'd be leaning backward over thin air instead of hugging the wood. Way harder to climb. He figured that out just by watching how things work. I knew he was right because I saw him testing that exact theory 2 days ago on a little fence he built for the grain shed. The second thing he did was add this raised walkway along the inside of the wall. He set it back 1 pace. It was a straight-up fighting platform so our guys could stand above the wall and look down, instead of trying to poke through it. I checked out his edits. Neither one was in my plan. Both were genius. Honestly, I was going to sneak that platform in later. I didn't want to freak everyone out with the "we might get attacked" talk in the first draft. But Ken? He went there immediately. He was already sweating the threats without me saying a word, and I definitely clocked that. The guy was starting to think 3 steps ahead. I told him, "Go get the wood." He was gone before I even closed my mouth. The build took 3 months and everyone had to put in work. I ran the schedule through Kaido so it looked official. Mornings were for building, afternoons for hunting in the fields, evenings for making gear. No all-day construction marathons. Our food supply couldn't handle us just stopping the hunt, and besides, tired workers make sketchy mistakes. Keep it steady, keep it moving. No hero stuff. Ken was the one actually bossing the labor. He had this natural don't mess with me energy when it came to building that I didn't even have to back up. People did what he said because the dude actually knew his stuff and would prove it by doing it himself first. He never told someone to do a job he hadn't personally stress tested. The tribe respected that more than almost anything else. We slapped the wall up first because you can't have a camp without a border. Scoring the wood took 2 weeks. Kin found this grove of straight as an arrow trees 200 meters north that were the perfect size. Chopping, trimming, and dragging those logs was the most brutal work the tribe had ever done, way worse than any hunt. And man, the whining around the fire was off the charts for those first 3 weeks. I heard the complaining and just ignored it. The work had to happen. People get it when something is necessary, even if it sucks. They just need to see that the grind is actually turning into something real. By the end of week 3, the south wall was actually standing there, 60 paces of wall, 3 meters high, angled just right, and Kin personally checked every single post before they filled the dirt in. That night, zero complaining. Everyone just stood there staring at what they'd built, feeling that specific we actually did it vibe. I'd totally planned it this way, finishing the south wall right before everyone was too exhausted to care anymore. It wasn't manipulation, okay? It was just smart scheduling. The job was going to take as long as it took. Figuring out when to drop those visible wins is just how you lead. We got the forge up in week 6 while the north and east walls were still going. Tetsu had some very specific I need this requests and told Kin himself, which I loved to see. Those two working together without me having to play middleman meant the whole specialist vibe was finally clicking on its own. Tetsu was straight up tripping over the wind direction for his big boy furnace. Floor needed to tank crazy heat without cracking, plus a roof that vents smoke but blocks the rain. Kin's roof fix was actually genius. He left a gap between the walls and the ceiling so heat just slides out sideways. Rain stays out because the gap is angled and the roof overhang is massive. Honestly, it's the same design every ancient culture used in the history books I read. Kin figured it out solo just by using his brain. I kept that secret to myself. Silence is a flex sometimes. Mental backhand number 4 hit in week 8, courtesy of Goro. I'd already sketched out a sweet spot for Goro's voodoo ceremonies in the base plans. Put it by the west wall, prime real estate, easy access, and symbolically near the cave mouth. I wasn't playing games. It was a legit peace offering for the tribe. Keeping their spooky rituals intact helps the squad stay tight, and I'm not about that drama. Goro saw the plans early and said 0, so I figured we were cool. Week 8? Not so much. He shows up to the morning meeting wanting his church right in the dead center. That's my communal bonfire and hangout spot. He claims the old spirits belong in the heart, not the wall. Look, that's the one piece of land I absolutely cannot hand over to him. The center is our main meeting point, the emergency exit zone, and the fire control area. It's the only place the whole squad fits. Putting a building there turns our base into a total death trap. I let the old man finish his little speech. Then I hit him with a question. Where does the tribe go to talk business right now? He grunted. The fire. And where do the ancestors talk? He stopped. Then he said, through the kid. Exactly. The spirits are wherever we meet. If we meet at the fire, they're already there. That west wall building is for the big shows the whole tribe watches. The center fire is for the big calls the whole tribe makes. Same energy, different vibes. Goro stared me down for a minute. He looked at the map and said, fine. Make it bigger. Bet. Tell me what you need. He went to find Kin. My center square stayed open. Success. Kaido was just chilling at the edge of the meeting the whole time, saying nothing. Once Goro cleared out, Kaido made this tiny grunt of approval. That's a rare win for me. We finished the whole settlement by the end of week 12. 3 days early because Kin's wood choices were better than my math, and the pillars went up fast. We moved in on a day Goro's weird calendar said was lucky or whatever. The ritual was a total grind fire, ash, and a bunch of speeches about ghost protection. Everyone came. People actually sat through the whole thing. I sat in my spot and admired the view. Fence is 150 paces around 3 meters tall, with a walkway for the guards. Main gate is a double-post beast. 2 people can open it, but nobody is kicking it down. Back gate is smaller and easy to lock down. The forge is officially hot. Tetsu tested the furnace twice before we moved. Output is solid. The airflow is way better. Sora's pottery shop is lit. She had her whole workspace dialed in 2 days after construction. She was super bossy about where her drying racks went. No one wanted that smoke. Seriously, nobody fought her. Grain storage is up, sealed tight, and the ceramic pots are filled. We've got 8 weeks of food. The next harvest should get us to that 4-month goal. 8 sleeping buildings for the families. Everyone's got a roof over their heads now. Ken added drainage ditches I didn't even ask for. No mud puddles. The guy is a genius. Ken is always playing chess while we play checkers. I found him on the gate tower. I climbed up and we just sat there, staring at the woods like a couple of bros. He said, the walkway needs a roof. Rain sucks for guards. I said, bet. How much wood? Got it. Then he's staring north again. D's been ghosting past the perimeter every night. News to me. How many times? I ask. Kin says, at least as many as I've spotted. He heads north, slides back in right before the sun hits. He's tight-lipped about the whole thing. I let that sink in for a second. Tell me the next time he bolts, I say. Kin just gives a silent nod. We hung out on the platform until the party noise downstairs died off and the trees turned into a black wall. Dai rolls back after night 5 looking like he just watched a horror movie that was actually real. I'm posted up at the side gate waiting for him. Ken had dragged me out of bed at the 3rd hour like we planned. Sky's still pitch black and the camp is dead silent, except for the fence creaking and the early morning wind. Dai freezes when he spots me. Then he trudges through the gate and just drops, Sits right on the dirt like he's finally dropping a pack he's been hauling for 1,000 miles. He talks forever. Turns out that Confederation to the northeast, they were his tribe's neighbors for years before they got swallowed whole. Wasn't always a bloodbath, at least not at first. They grew using this vibe: die, calls, squeeze, and deal. They move in close. They make it crystal clear that fighting back is gonna hurt. Then they offer a seat at the table where you get to live and eat. But your freedom? Yeah, that's gone. His tribe said hard pass 3 times over 2 years. Then the 4th time, the Confederation showed up with enough muscle that no wasn't an option anymore. He grabbed his 8 people and booked it west instead of joining the Borg. That was 18 months ago. In his head, the Confederation hasn't stopped growing. Those fires he's been watching from the tree line? 4 nights of playing spy from the high ground confirms it. That's a forward base. Not some random hunters, but a base. They aren't marching yet, but they're in position. I ask him how long we've got. He thinks about it like Kaido thinks about tracking all about the terrain and how fast they can move. Before the winter ends, he says, they'll want to roll out while the ground is frozen solid. Maybe 40 days. 40 days. I'm doing the math on the walk back to my room, and yeah, sleep is definitely off the table. Our current muscle? 26 people, maybe 16 who won't trip over their own feet in a fight. Bronze-tipped spears and knives, which are way better than the junk the Confederation probably has. We've got the wall platforms, and a gate that's supposed to hold against a group that's already steamrolled multiple tribes. It's not enough. Not even close. I was gonna wait until spring to drop the gunpowder tech. Spring's a joke now. Black powder has 3 parts: potassium nitrate, charcoal, and sulfur. Weight ratio, 75, 15, 10. Not exactly a secret where I come from. It's in every chem book and war history written in 100 different languages. Here, it only exists inside my skull. Charcoal we've got in piles. The forge has been cranking it out for months. We've got at least 60 kilograms in the back. Problem solved. I flagged sulfur as a maybe later thing when I looked at the merchant maps 8 weeks back. There are volcanic spots to the southeast, 2 days travel, and volcanoes usually mean easy sulfur just sitting on the surface. I hadn't sent a team yet because I didn't need the boom stuff. That plan just got a major update. Saltpeter is the real bottleneck. The best way is finding white crust in dry caves, mineral-rich dirt where stuff has been rotting for ages. Plan B is the gross method. Compost beds of trash, ash, and literal pee, sitting for 6 to 8 weeks. We only have 40 days. So, cave diving it is? I went to Goro the next morning. Not my first pick for a hang, but he was the guy for the job. Goro knows things about the local rocks and caves that nobody else has even thought of. He's been wandering this dirt for 50 years, doing rituals and reading the landscape for spirit vibes. If there were saltpeter deposits around, he'd have seen that white, frosty crust. I framed it as ritual stuff, asked if he'd seen any caves with a white mineral frost on the walls that doesn't melt when it's warm. He just stares at me for a long beat. Then he says, yeah, 3 spots. Closest one is 4 hours southeast. I tell him he's taking me there. He doesn't even ask why. He gave up on asking me why a long time ago. We headed out at dawn with Kaido and 2 hunters. We made it back before dark with 40 kilograms of junk scraped off the walls of a dusty cave. The place smelled like a giant ammonia bomb and had white crust covering the bottom 2 meters of everything. Crude saltpeter. Now comes the fun part: cleaning it. Lots of water, filtering, and doing it all over again. We had to scrub the gunk out, reboiling it to ditch the calcium and magnesium trash that usually kills the energy. 3 cycles minimum. Pure grind. I had the Potts and Kawa's massive chemistry brain, which was exactly the combo I needed. 40 days, super tight, but we could do it. I sent Kin's fastest track star south for sulfur that same afternoon. The crew made it back in 6 days flat, hauling 22 kilos of raw yellow rock in clay-sealed ceramic jars. The runner was this 17-year-old kid named Shugai, was basically built for long-distance marathon endurance. He hauled tail both ways and showed up looking like absolute death, but totally stoked with the results. I gave him 2 days off. Kid's got skills beyond just running. Meanwhile, Kawa starts the deep clean on the saltpeter. I explain the workflow: once melt it down, strain it through some tight weave fabric, and keep it moving. Then comes the crystallization part where the magic happens as the hot liquid starts to chill out. She spit the facts back at me, even flagging 2 spots where sloppy work would totally ruin the whole batch. Then she asks if the pot needs a specific shape. Nope, it doesn't matter what the vessel looks like. That one question proved she was already thinking about mass production before the first batch even finished drying. 12 days and 3 cycles gave us 11 kilos of potassium nitrate. Not medical grade, obviously, but perfect for making things go boom. Day 14. Finally time for a little science experiment with a small test batch. Proportions: 75 grams of saltpeter, 15 of charcoal, and 10 of sulfur, all ground up separately. Not optional. Mixing before grinding is how the original powder makers ended up blowing themselves to bits. Then I mixed them super carefully with a bone tool on a flat ceramic plate. Ended up with this grainy, gray-black dust that smelled like sulfur and something way more ancient and scary. Took it 30 meters outside the walls. Just Tetsu, Kin, and me. No crowds, no witnesses. Kaido was in the loop, but Goro? Hard no. I set down a tiny pile of the stuff, maybe 3 grams. Stuck a fiber wick in, backed up, and lit that sucker with an ember. Kin brought in a pot. The wick hissed for maybe 2 seconds. Then, total flashover. No slow burn, no big fire, just a sharp crack and a flash that left a scar on the stone. Tetsu legit jumped back. He just stood there with his arms out like his body knew to run before his brain did. He just stared at the burn. Kin didn't flinch. He was eyeing the smoke like it was some complex structural math problem. After a second, he just goes, again, bigger. Luckily, I brought enough for 3 rounds. I doubled the pile for the second go. The crack was so sharp and weird, nothing in this world sounds like that. A bird went nuclear from the trees 60 meters away. Then the whole forest just went dead silent. Kin watched the bird fly off, then looked at me. This is what you've been building toward, isn't it? It wasn't even a question. I just nodded. He asked how we make it throw a rock. That's next, I told him. Round 5 of Annoy the Elders happened that night. Goro definitely heard the noise. That second crack echoed through the whole camp. And let's just say the vibe inside was pretty chaotic. Everyone was crowding the walkway to look, and D actually ran to the gate with a weapon before Kaido stopped him. Goro caught me by the side gate. He wasn't alone. Either he brought 2 of the tribal elders with him. That's his power move formation. He only does that when he wants to speak for the tribe, not just himself. He goes, "That noise outside came from you." I just said, "Yup." Then he asks what spirit I'm summoning. I told him it's no spirit, just some ground-up rocks mixed the right way. It just burns really fast. He stared at my ceramic pot with the leftovers in it. "Show me," he says. I put a tiny pinch on a stone near the forge Tetsu's turf, so Goro wasn't fully in charge. Inside that cramped forge area, the flash and crack were way louder than the outdoor tests. One of the old guys literally yelped and jumped back like he'd been stung. The other guy reached for something to hold and got nothing but air. Goro didn't budge. He just stared. He says, "The ancestors gave you this." I told him they just gave me the knowledge of how stuff works. "This is just how these rocks act," I said. "There's plenty more." The 2 elders were still buffering. Then Goro turns to them and starts talking in that super formal official announcement voice. He used that same god-tier voice he busted out when I first became a big deal, like 18 months into this whole new life thing. Old man's yapping about how I summoned fire from a rock, said it was some holy gift from the ghosts of our ancestors, basically told everyone to be terrified. And yeah, wasting it? Not happening. He was totally gatekeeping the boom dust, making sure he was the only one in charge before anyone else could mess with the hype. Saw it coming. I told him, "Look, you're the boss of the fancy rituals, so you do you." He just stared. His narrow face finally stopped looking so tense. It wasn't like he was being nice, but more like a guy who's been playing defense and just realized I handed him the win for free. "Damn right," he said, then bounced. His goons followed. Ken was watching from the forge, and once Goro cleared out, he whispered, "You gave him the clout so he wouldn't steal the powder." I looked at him. "Nah. I gave him the clout so he'd be the one forced to protect the powder." Kim went quiet for a sec. Then he nodded. "Okay, yeah. That's actually way smarter." Kin's first question the morning after the boom tests was straight to the point. "No, what is this?" "Junk just all right. What do we need to build it?" We sat by the forge before the sun was even up. Just us, a lamp, and a clay tablet for notes. I sketched out how a gun works in the simplest way possible. A tube, one end plugged, powder behind a bullet, and a tiny hole for the spark. Basically, all that exploding gas has only one way out. Kin stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he muttered that the tube can't explode. Bingo. He said bronze would just snap. Right again. We need iron. He went silent. We've made iron for tools, but can we make it tough enough to be a tube without failing? That was the million-dollar question. And honestly, it was going to be a nightmare to figure out. The iron we'd been getting from Tetsu's 4-month-old furnace was basically wrought iron. It's workable, but super sketchy because the process leaves this gross, spongy mess we have to beat the hell out of to get the trash out. Making it the same every time was a massive problem. If a barrel has one tiny bit of trash in the wrong spot, boom, it'll straight up delete the person holding it the second they pull the trigger. I laid it out for Ken, no sugarcoating. He just listened. Then he said, "So Tetsu needs to level up his iron game first." I nodded. "Tetsu needs to make iron that isn't full of junk. We do that by hammering the bloom more heat, and actually paying attention to what we're throwing in the furnace." Kin just said, "Tell me what to tell him." Tetsu's reaction was classic. He didn't ask why, he just wanted to know the test. So we came up with a way to check. Just an iron bar, specific size. We hit it with a massive stone hammer. If it's good, it bends. If it's trash, it cracks or just shatters into pieces. We tested his current stash. 3 out of 8 bars were total junk. Tetsu stared at the broken pieces for a minute. Then he just walked back to his furnace without a word. For 2 days, he worked that metal through 4 extra rounds of heat and hammers. Every single bar passed the next time around. I didn't even have to tell him how many cycles to do. He just experimented until it hit the mark. Exactly what I needed. Logged it. 2 days for consistent iron. Gotta update the schedule. Meanwhile, Kin was obsessed with the barrel. He came back on the 3rd morning with a tweak I totally didn't see coming. Instead of trying to make one solid tube, he wanted to wrap it. Basically, winding iron strips around a wooden stick like a helix, then welding the seams shut. I remembered reading about this. People did this back in my old life before they figured out how to drill perfect holes. Kin figured out that a solid tube was too hard for our crappy tools, but wrapping it spread the stress out better. I checked out his prototype. It was just a short, non-working piece, but I crunched the physics in my head. A wrapped tube would totally hold the pressure. The weld was the only thing that mattered. I asked him, "How good are these seams, though?" He showed me 3 more. I hammered them. 2 were solid, but 1 had a tiny gap. Ken pointed right at the mistake. "I know why I messed that up. Won't happen again." I knew he meant it. 12 days left. First working barrel. Day 16 of the countdown. We're actually 2 days ahead of my guess. Kin and Tetsu basically became a well-oiled machine. Tetsu handled the raw iron and the strips. Kin did the wrapping and the welding. They stayed in their lanes. No drama, just straight-up work. Thought I'd have to play ref here. Nope. Dude just got it. Gun 1. 80 centimeters of iron, thick enough for a 1 centimeter ball. Ken even added a stock. Iron bands held it tight. The stock was curved to hug your shoulder. The guy's never seen a gun. He figured out recoil physics alone. If it kicks, your shoulder takes the hit. Pure genius, honestly. Loaded the first musket myself. Powder, ball, paper, rammed it all down with a wooden rod until it was tight. I propped the barrel against a heavy log right at the edge of the woods. Target, a tree 20 meters away. I touched a hot coal to the hole and boom, the sound was totally different. Way sharper than the open powder tests. This had a real nasty snap to it. A focused blast that rocked the log. The iron ball absolutely slammed the trunk. 3 centimeters deep into solid wood. Ken, standing 10 meters back, just stared at the hole for ages. He walked over, poked his finger in, and measured the damage with his thumb. He looks at the gun. 20 meters? What's the max? I told him 50, if you're good. Luck gets you further, he says, and the clearing is 60 meters wide. I just nodded. Yup. How fast to reload, he asks. I show him. Construction work made his internal clock perfect. 45 seconds for a pro, 90 seconds if you are a total noob. He says, 1 shot, then they're on us. I shot back. Exactly why we need more guns. How many can we make? He asks. I told him 8 in 12 days. He looked at the trees. 8 ain't enough, he mutters. I told him we're making something bigger. Enter the howitzer. 8 guns versus 200 enemies? That wins us 5 seconds, then we are basically dead. Muskets are snipers. You aim, you hit, you kill. 1 guy. But against a 10-to-1 horde, I needed an aerial beast. No aiming, just pure wide-range destruction. Something to clear the whole zone. Honestly, howitzers are simpler than muskets in a few ways. Giant tube, massive powder, and a payload that wrecks everything nearby. Accuracy? Who cares? The scale was the real nightmare. This barrel had to be huge, way heavier than the muskets. Bigger pipe means more chances for the iron to fail. Total structural anxiety. Day 18. I pitched the idea to Tetsu and Kin using a clay tablet for the sketches. I drew the musket next to the big boy. Dimensions, powder, range, all there. Tetsu just stared. It is doable, he says, but time is tight. I told him we only need 1. 1 shot is enough if we aim it right. Kin asks, where is the spot? I had mapped it out already. The bad guys are coming from the northeast, obviously. That is exactly where their main camp is sitting. It is the only clear path, and Dai saw them scouting right there. The path bottlenecks 80 meters from the gate, a perfect kill zone before they hit our walls. We stick the howitzer on the gate platform. Gravity does the work for a perfect plunging strike. I sketched the arc on the tablet. Kin eyeballed it with his hands. I'll build a fixed mount, he says. If we are hitting the funnel, we don't need fancy knobs. Fixed is smarter. No time for training on fancy gear. Ken and Tetsu bolted for the forge. Day 23. 7 days left. 6 muskets done. 2 finishing up. 24 kilos of powder. 40 iron balls ready for the muskets. 6 stones for the howitzer. Tetsu carved them perfect. He knew even a tiny bump would ruin the flight. The big barrel was finally finished. Tetsu hammered it through 5 tests. It held up better than the small guns. He is a pro now. The iron he is making is way better than what I actually asked for. Ken got the mount ready. I checked the elevation angle against the mark I'd set at the funnel point, using that classic stick and shadow ranging trick. Trajectory confirmed. Ken even added a shield, basically a rugged section of wall planking, mounted on a pivot right in front of the big gun position, which flips open to blast and shuts to keep the gunner from getting geeked between shots. I never even asked for the thing. Ken just saw the howitzer spot was a total death trap and fixed the problem before I even knew it was won. Honestly, I'm running out of stuff to teach the guy. Day 20. Boot camp officially starts. 16 people. 7 days to cram 2 weeks of hell into their heads. You can't forge real soldiers in a week, but I could turn them into machines that know their specific job and won't choke when the heat is on. The musket squad. 8 shooters for 8 guns. Dai was my absolute first choice to lead the team. He's got the tactical moves, the ice-cold nerves, and every hunter in the village respects the hell out of him. When I showed him the first gun firing, he just gave me a nod. I get it. Now give me the rest. Training was simple. Drill the loading sequence until their hands move on total autopilot. No thinking aloud. Fire only on my command. And for the love of God, do not bolt when your gut tells you to run. The stay put part was the real killer. Day 22, I ran a drill. Boru's hunters charged the gate, screaming like banshees. 2 of my 8 shooters flinched. They actually took a step back from the edge of the platform. The other 6? Solid as rocks. I made a mental note of the ones who blinked. I shuffled the deck so the 6 brave ones take the primary spots, while the flinchers handle reloading, still vital, just less exposed. Kept the Y to myself, though Dai totally got it. Then there was the cannon crew. Kin and this guy Shu, an endurance beast with the muscle to load heavy and the chill I saw back during that sulfur run. Kin drilled Shu on the loading sequence for 2 days straight. By the time day 3 rolled around, Shu was actually outspeeding Ken on the individual steps, though Kin was still the boss of the judgment calls. Kaido tracked me down on the evening of day 24. He hadn't been messing with the weapon building stuff at all. He was busy handling the hunters, setting up the perimeter, and prepping the village for a long-haul siege. Plus, he scouted a backdoor exit through the caves and out along the ridge to the northeast. He handled all that without asking for permission, exactly what I've come to expect from the guy. He sat by me at the forge while I was checking the powder inventory, walked me through the plan for the hit. So, I laid the whole thing out for him. The trap, the cannon blast, the chaos, then Dai's squad on the wall raining lead in waves while we hold the gate. The heavy cost of those first few minutes to buy time for everything else. He listened to the whole thing. Then he asks, "What if they skip the northeast?" I told him. "Dai's sure. Dai's been wrong before," he replied. He didn't think his own tribe would ditch him either. I looked at the gear, then back at Kaido. Damn. He was right. I'd leaned way too hard on Dai's intel just because it was all I had. If they split up and flank us, we're toast, I said. Kaido just smirked. Already got eyes on the south and west. I moved them yesterday. Didn't want to bug you while you were grinding. You weren't needed for that call. I just stared at him. He said, "Look, kid, you're 10. You can't do it all. That's why I'm here." That hit home. I went quiet for a second. So, what did those watchers actually report? Nothing yet, but they're there. I tweaked my strategy for tomorrow and finally called it a night. Then I crashed. Sleeping was literally the most productive thing I could do with the few hours left. That scouting issue had been eating at my brain for 2 weeks. Dai's info was decent, sure. But it was 4 days old, and the Confederation's camp isn't static. It breathes, it moves, it evolves. They shift around and leave tracks that a pro could read if they were close enough and skilled enough. Dai's definitely skilled enough. The problem? Getting close enough is basically a suicide mission. These guys know the turf. They've got their own eyes glued to the tree line, waiting for a move. Sending Dai back in was a gamble I wasn't taking with only 6 days left. His brain is irreplaceable. What I really needed was a way to spy on them from the sky, total bird's eye view. I'd been messing with a glider design in the dead of night, while the forge cooled and everyone else was dreaming. So, look, we were basically balling on a budget with 0 time and whatever junk we could find. This wasn't supposed to be some high-tech fighter jet. Making a legit engine was way out of my league with the tools I had, and I knew that from day one. Instead, I cooked up a steam-boosted glider. Basically just a light wooden skeleton wrapped in animal skins, big enough to haul one tiny person, with a compact steam boiler giving us just enough juice for the launch and climb. After that, pure gliding. The steam part was the real headache. That boiler had to be light enough so the whole rig didn't just plummet because the wings couldn't handle the weight. I crunched the numbers using basic aerophysics I'd memorized 40 years ago in my old life, man. I'm glad I held on to that trivia. The math worked. Barely. The pilot couldn't weigh more than 45 kilos. On the morning of day 21, I went to track down my target. Haru's kid, 14. She'd been on my radar for months, and not just because she was a featherweight. I'd been watching her for 2 years. She climbed everything: walls, roofs, giant trees, with this wild vibe like she didn't even know heights were supposed to be scary. The girl just got three-dimensional space in a way most people don't. She headed for the high ground naturally. Nobody told her to. She just knew that being up high meant having the intel. Also, she clocked in at 41 kilos. Bullseye. I found her hanging out on the fighting platform where she basically lived ever since Ken finished it. She was staring off to the northeast, totally locked in on the terrain. I sat down and showed her the glider sketches on my clay tablet. She just stared for a hot minute, silent. Then she points at the wings and asks how the skins were attached. She wanted to know if they were tight or had some stretch. Honestly, solid question. Tight means more control but sucks in a storm. A little give means you won't snap in half when things get bumpy. I told her I went for a middle ground tension. She just nods and goes, "So, what's the move once I'm up there?" I told her, "Scope out that northeast camp. Count the fires, the tents, the bodies moving. Come back and spill everything." She asks, "How high?" And I'm like, "If the launch goes smooth and the air stays hot, maybe 80 to 100 meters. She looked out at the trees. At 100 meters, that enemy camp 4 kilometers away would be clear as day if the weather didn't suck. She was doing the math in her head right then. She asks what happens if the steam cuts out before she's high enough. I told her she'd just glide down. Then she asks about bad wind. "Then you just glide down faster," I said. She sat with that for a second. "Then, I'm in. No question about it. Just a fact." I told her I knew she would be, which is why I was there. Ken knocked out the build in 4 days. He'd never built a flying machine in his life. He just handled it like any other job, starting with the stress points. Wings had to be light so the boiler and pilot didn't crush them. They had to be tough enough for the flight loads and the rough landings, and they had to be perfectly matched on both sides. If one wing is off, the lift is off. And if that happens, the plane rolls itself into the ground, and the pilot's toast. He pulled 4-day marathons on top of his regular work, messing with the glider during my planning hours. I caught him at 2 in the morning, working by lamplight, literally feeling the wing frames with his bare hands to check the symmetry. I just watched for a bit. Didn't say a word. He was sliding his fingers along every single rib, feeling for bumps in the wood, tweaking the ties in ways I couldn't even see. But he could feel it, just like he always does. Touch first, eyes second, gut feeling third. I went back to my desk and let the man cook. Tetsu owned the boiler. I gave him the basics. Heat water in a sealed iron box, let the steam blast through a hole. Point that blast at some angled blades to make the whole thing spin. Simple turbine. By any modern engineering standard, the efficiency was absolute garbage. But we weren't looking for awards. We just needed 3 minutes of thrust for the jump. Tetsu went through 3 versions. First one leaked like a sieve. Second one held pressure, but the blades were janky and it barely spun. Third time was the charm. He figured out the blade physics all on his own just by watching it work. So version 2 was a total bust. Kid watched the steam just bounce off those blades like they were invisible walls. He fixed the angle by pulling an all-nighter, testing stuff solo without even giving me a heads up about his plan. Fired up the 3rd boiler on day 23. Just 2 days before those Confederation clowns were supposed to start moving. That prop was spinning fast enough that, with Kin's wings, we'd have the juice to clear 60 meters of dirt and catch air. One shot. No do-overs. Say spent the whole day before the big launch just figuring out how the heck to steer. 2 main controls. A tail flap for pitch handled by a stick between her knees, plus some weight shifting where she'd lean her body to handle roll. I showed her the ropes using this tiny model Kin slapped together from junk, just holding it up to catch the breeze. She messed with that model for 3 hours straight. Then she just drops it and says, "I get it." I told her no. She said, "I know, tell me what to expect when the whole feeling is just wrong and the air dies." I warned her about the stall vibes, the lift dying, the controls getting all mushy, and the nose begging to dip toward the ground. I told her to point the nose down first. Sounds totally backwards, I know, but it's the only way you don't die. I filled her in on the nasty turbulence popping off the trees during hot afternoons. She soaked up every single word like a sponge. She asked 3 things, only about worst-case scenarios, not the easy stuff. Once she was done, she ghosted me to find Haru. No clue what she told her mother. Haru eventually tracked me down with a look that was part rage and part terror, saying, "Bring her back." I said, "Yeah, that was the biggest promise I made all week, and I wasn't joking." Launch day hit on the 25th, 4 days before the movement. Actually, Dai's latest scouting report from the night before cut that down to only 3 days. They were teaming up. We needed the deets right now. Southfield launch, right into the morning breeze. Say's strapped in, and the boiler's been cooking for 20 minutes to build up steam. Kin and 4 dudes were on the rails he built. 2 wooden tracks on a downhill slope to give her a speed boost at takeoff. I eyeballed the pressure by checking the steam screaming out of the release valve. Sora made the valve out of fired ceramic. Honestly, not my first pick for something holding back exploding steam. But Tetsu swore the heat specs were solid, and the guy hasn't missed a beat on material science yet. Sei sat there looking like someone who'd already made peace with the fact that things might get extremely messy. She'd been quiet since we got to the site, dead silent. That's exactly the headspace you want for this. I told her, find their layout, count their fires to get numbers, and see if they've actually started marching yet. She said, got it. I told her, if the vibe is off, you land immediately. She just repeated, got it. I said, aim for this same field. Don't wander too far. She just said, run. I know. Light the burner. I lit the match. Prop spun up for 40 seconds, and you could actually see the whole frame vibrating like crazy. Kin's crew gripped the rails to keep us straight. I shouted, go! And they just let the whole thing rip. That glider tore down the tracks for 15 meters. The prop was easily the loudest thing this village has ever heard. Way louder than the big gun tests. It just kept screaming until the nose tilted up. 3 seconds of pure power. Nose up, propeller screaming. Then the steam pressure topped out and started to die down. The propeller lagged and the nose dipped exactly like it should. Sei tightened her grip, and then boom, the glider was climbing engine-free. She caught a massive thermal rising off the sun-baked field, landing it exactly where I'd predicted for this early in the morning. 80 meters, 90. Her shadow was just a tiny speck now. Sei banked north like a pro, just like we practiced earlier. She pulled this massive arc over the camp and the tribe watching from below, then leveled out and headed toward the northeast. Kin was right there beside me. Didn't say a single word. She was airborne for 19 minutes. The landing? Well, it was way sketchier than I'd hoped for. She was coming in hot. In the last 10 meters, the right wing clipped the dirt, dragged, and sent the nose spinning around. She jumped out before the thing even stopped moving, walking my way while the dust was thick. Her left arm was all scraped. She didn't even notice the blood. She just looked at me and said, I saw them. She began immediately. No small talk. She didn't care that the whole tribe was standing there in a shocked circle around her wrecked plane. The camp is 3 kilometers northeast, closer than Dai thought, and way bigger than his fire count estimate made it look. Yo, she counted 42 campfires. That's basically a small army of maybe 300 dudes. They haven't bounced yet, but the whole setup looks way different now. Everything's packed for travel instead of just hanging out. She could tell by how they stacked their gear from up there. Then she drops a bomb. There's something else. I'm like, spit it out. She says a squad split off and headed west. 20 fires, maybe 30 people sneaking along the ridge toward our south side. Kaido's scouts were going to spot them eventually, but they were already on the move. I caught Kaido's eye. He was already heading out to check the scout reports. I looked at our glider, right wings trashed, engines cold as ice. 1 flight, 19 minutes. Barely made it, honestly. That night's meeting was the fastest we've ever had. Just Kaido, Dai, and me. No big ceremony, no Goro. I purposely left him out and figured I'd just deal with the fallout later. The 4 of us sat at the forge table with the map out, grinding through the new intel for 40 minutes. Main army, 300 strong, moving northeast in 3 days. That plan hadn't changed. The cannon and the shooters up north were still the play for that side. 30 people on the western ridge. Kaido's scouts confirmed they were moving by noon. Moving steady, no rush. They're just the flank, not the main hit. They'll time it to hit the gate while the main guys distract us up north. Classic pincer move from the west. D called it immediately. Said this was exactly how they wrecked his neighbors 3 years back. 1 squad in front, 1 on the side. They've never hit a target that actually saw the second team coming. I said, bet, let's use that. Their path leads straight to our west wall where the fence and platforms are finally done. That west platform didn't have any cannons or muskets assigned yet. It only had 4 spots for guys with bronze gear. 4 against 30? Even with a 3-meter wall, that's trash math. Hin goes, I can fix that platform. 1 day's work. I asked what he was thinking, and he started geek-talking about loads and forces. He wanted to stretch the roof over the west section, then double up the wood on the wall right there so nothing can punch through it. Plus, he'd build these angled chutes to pour hot trash down on anyone trying to climb the outside. I asked, hot stuff? He said, we've got the forge in the kiln, total heat source. He planned to run clay pipes from the exhaust vents straight to big tanks on the west platform. The tanks would hold boiling water or scorching sand. Either one makes the wall impossible to climb. D checked the map and liked the sound of that. D's like, they won't see this coming, Kin says. They've seen nothing. I gave Kin the green light immediately. Battle day. Cloudy, chilly, no rain, honestly, pretty good conditions for a fight. The main squad hit the northern clearing by mid-morning. Just like Dai figured they're fans of the daylight, he says. We heard him before we saw him, not like people trying to be sneaky either. Just the racket of 250 people stomping through the brush without a care because nobody ever challenged them before. That noise was actually a huge help. These idiots had zero clue what they were walking into. We were ready. 8 riflemen on the north deck. Dies in the middle, loaded and waiting. Ken and Shu are at the cannon behind the gate. Aim set, powders in, stone rounds ready to go. Kaido's at the gate with 4 hunters and bronze spears. He locked it himself. Boru and 2 hunters are on the north platform too. 6 people on the west side now. Kin bumped it up from 4 because his crazy one-day construction job totally changed the defensive math for us. Goro was hanging in the center with the non-combat crew. Did his sunrise ceremony thing. Everyone showed up, even the gunners while they were checking their gear. I went too. It was actually decent. Haru's in the granary. C is right next to me at the lookout. She kept begging for a rifle spot. I told her she's way more clutch as a spotter than trying to aim a gun she's never even touched. She gave me that look, the one where she agrees but hates the result. Watching the trees. I'm watching her. So Dai calls it northeast edge of the gap. These goons pop out the woods exactly how she said they would. Front row was looking real beefy. These big dudes up front were lugging around these DIY shields, basically just slabs of bark and hide stretched over wooden frames. Right behind them, the main squad starts spreading out once they hit the open air, trying to hog the whole lane. Meanwhile, the big shots stayed back in the trees, watching from the safety zone. 80 meters to our gate. 60 meters to the funnel, that spot where the trees get all claustrophobic. They hit the edge of the woods and just stopped. Dead silence. A whole wall of shields just staring us down. Some shot caller was over there crunching the numbers on our base. I glanced at the howitzer. Kim was staring at me like, "Yo, we doing this?" The funnel was 80 meters out. The main crew was still chilling at the wood line, maybe 120 meters back. They hadn't pulled the trigger yet. So I waited. Hardest thing I've done in 10 years of this life? No cap. Just standing there while they're right there. Patience is a straight-up nightmare. But look, the howitzer is trash if we waste it on the trees. If they chicken out now, we get the intel, they get 0. Win-win. But if they actually go for it, we need that round landing right in the funnel. I kept my voice low. They're rolling. The front line stepped out. I let them crawl to 85 meters, close enough that our math actually worked for once. They hit the funnel, and the trees on both sides squished them into this tiny column, maybe 20 meters across. I gave Ken the nod. The howitzer went boom. Way louder than the practice shots. Those palisade walls basically acted like giant speakers, blasting the sound right at us. The crack of that thing slapped the inside of the platform and bounced back hard. Everyone on the west side straight up flinched. That stone ball was moving faster than anything these people have ever seen. It slammed into that tight crowd at the funnel exactly where Kin aimed it. Perfect shot. The round hit, skipped like a stone on a pond, and just ripped through that column from front to back. And what it did to the people in its way? Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. I was looking at the play-by-play, not the casualties. Here's what matters. The front row was basically deleted. The rest of them just froze. In that pause, for maybe 3 or 4 seconds, there was this weird, haunted silence. These guys had zero idea how to process what just happened. Combat wasn't supposed to be like this. I threw the second signal. Dai's voice sliced through the air from the north platform. Fire! 8 muskets went off in like 2 seconds flat. That volley sound piled on top of the howitzer's echo, creating this unholy noise that honestly doesn't have a name in this world yet. The main group didn't just stop, they scrambled sideways and backward. The bosses back at the trees were screaming their heads off. That forward push they had, it was falling apart. They were trying to regroup, but it was getting messy under the pressure. Ken's reloading the big gun. 40 seconds. Dai's squad is working the muskets. 60 seconds for the rookies. I gave him a 60-second window. In that minute, the enemy tried to pull it together. A few of them actually started coming forward again. 40 meters. 30. Kin let the second howitzer round fly. This one was a straight-line laser. The angle was different this time because the target had moved up. Kin had to eyeball the adjustment in those 40 seconds. He didn't nail it perfectly. The round hit low, chewing up the dirt in front of them, but seeing 2 of those things in 1 minute? That messes with your head way more than your body. Dai's crew fired their second volley at 25 meters. The timing was, well, not what we practiced. A couple of the guys fired early, which killed that single, terrifying crack sound that usually makes a volley effective. Mark that down as a fail for later training if there is a later. Total count, 16 rounds in 2 minutes. The main group never touched the gate. But right then, the Western force slammed into our west wall just as Dai's squad was finishing their second volley. Give them credit, it was pro timing. They waited for the noise of the main fight to use as their signal to move. Too bad for them, Ken's west platform was already locked and loaded. As soon as they started climbing, we pulled the pins. Heated sand from the forge exhaust came pouring down these chutes we built. It didn't kill anyone, obviously, but it made that wall impossible to climb. Suddenly, those guys cared way more about the hot sand in their shirts than actually breaching the wall. Our 6 defenders up there, all with bronze gear, just sat on that high ground, kin built and went to town. They didn't even have to be good at fighting to win this. The Western force brought ladders. Ladders go up, hot sand comes down, and the ladders come away. They tried it 3 times. Total fail. Round 3. 2 guys actually managed to scramble up the wall face. My backup squad, under Boru, had just shifted over to the west deck after that mess in the north, and they showed up right as the enemy's main line started to crumble. Those 2 dudes on the wall saw the backup arriving, did the math, and made the only sane choice you make when the odds suddenly suck. They hauled it down that ladder way faster than they climbed up. The Western force ghosted us, retreating along the ridge within 4 minutes of making contact. That told me 2 things. They weren't fully committed to the fight, and they already had a plan B ready to go, meaning their commander was just vibe-checking us rather than launching a real assault. Their main group pulled back to the woods. They didn't run. We had to be clear about that. 250 soldiers don't just bolt because of 8 muskets and a single big boom. No matter how weird our gear looked, they stopped. They took their hits. They hit a wall they didn't expect, so they played it smart and hit the pause button. That's not a loss, that's a regroup. Now, I just needed their regroup to go our way. I looked at Kaido and said, "Pop the gate." He gave me this look. I told him, "Just me. I'm going out there to the clearing. No gear." He said, "That is incredibly stupid." "Nope," I told him. "Their leadership is still at the tree line, watching and crunching the numbers. If I walk out there solo, they have to wrap their heads around what that means before they can even think about attacking again. I need that hesitation." Kaido reminded me I was only 11. I said, "Exactly. That's the hook." He just stared at me for a long time. It was that specific face he makes when he's already decided yes but wants to double-check his own sanity one last time. Finally, he said D was going with me. I told him no, D stays on the deck where they can see him. They need to see him coming out without the guys holding the guns. Kaido opened the gate himself, standing right in the gap. That was his version of a compromise. Door open, him standing there, armed and visible. He wasn't moving an inch, and I wasn't going more than 20 meters out. I stepped into the dirt. Their leader was out front, standing ahead of his group, the classic I'm the boss power move. Broad, covered in scars, and way older than Kaido. This guy had been winning wars since before I was born. His name was Musashi, found that out later. He watched me from the edge of the trees, maybe 40 meters away. We were both doing the same thing, just taking it all in. We didn't speak the same tongue. D said their dialect was close to ours, but definitely a different remix. I'd prepped 6 sentences in my best guess of their language and practiced them until they were as smooth as I could get them. I shouted across the gap. The gist of it was, "Your West squad is alive." The guys caught in the trap? My bad. I didn't want that. We didn't start this fight. We aren't going to hunt you down. Come back in 3 days if you want to talk. Silence from the woods. Musashi scanned the whole scene, Kaido at the gate, Dai and the gun crew on the wall, and then me, just standing there by myself. Then he looked at the black scorch marks where the howitzer round hit the kill zone. He'd walked right past those burns to get here. He knew exactly what they meant. He shouted something back. I only caught about half of it, but the main question was clear. "What the hell are you?" I yelled back in my broken version of his speech. "Just a kid who's over this war and has a lot more of those big booms. See you in 3 days." Musashi didn't move for a heartbeat. Then he signaled the group behind him. They started backing into the trees, no panic, just a controlled, professional exit. They even had guards watching their backs like pros. I watched until the forest swallowed them whole. I walked back. Kaido didn't say a word. He just shut the gate and threw the bolt himself. Up on the deck, Sei was still staring at the spot where Musashi had been, arms crossed, leaning forward, the posture she gets when she's really trying to process some crazy stuff she just saw. I climbed up next to her. She said, "He'll be back." I said, "Yup." She asked, "Is that actually what you wanted?" "Yeah," I told her, "because 300 people who respect us are way more useful than 300 people who just fear us. Fear is chaotic. Respect is predictable." She chewed on that for a second, then asked what if he comes back with an army in 3 days. I told her we'd have 3 days to figure that out. She looked at the trees for 1 more minute. Then she went to check the wounded with Haru. The bill for the fight? 3 of our people hurt, nobody dead. Boru took a stray rock to the left shoulder over on the west deck. Not even a real fight, just a flex. The Westerners clearly weren't going all in yet. Kai, one of our wall guards, caught a nasty forearm gash during their 3rd ladder attempt. Someone else got rattled by the cannon's kickback. Powder burned, 2 shots at 400 grams, 16 musket rounds at 15 grams each, totaled 640 grams, still got plenty. The scrap was so fast it was almost embarrassing. Total overkill. The Westerners just bounced. No clue how many they lost. Probably light work. Kin used sand to scare, not kill. Their main force got wrecked at the choke point. Bad. Washi counted the bodies for me. That number? That's what actually matters for what's coming. Ken checked the walls after. One section was pretty chewed up from the ladders. 2 days to fix, he figured. He already scoped the timber in his head. The big gun shifted on the second boom. Kinsey's aim was fire under pressure, but the mount rattled loose after the first shot. He fixed it that same afternoon. The new setup was better than the original. No big deal. Goro did a whole ritual that night for our wounded, and the guys we dropped. I went. Had to show face, plus it's good for the vibe I'm setting up. Exactly the right posture for what I was hoping would go down in 3 days. Da sat there looking like a man, realizing he joined a very different crew. I get it. I planned it that way. Musashi showed up on day 2. No fighters, just talkers. 4 people. 2 old-timers, a woman, and a guy who walked like his legs were trash. No blades visible. A let's talk crew, not some scout team looking for trouble. D gave the thumbs up from the wall. I hit the gate. Kaido didn't even argue. Musashi was a tank. Wider than he looked from 40 meters away. Scars all over. Old scars too. The kind that just become part of the decor on a guy's face. He stared, realizing the kid he heard about was actually the boss. Took him a second. Then he started checking out our wall setup and the fighting platforms visible up top. He was reading our base like a map, making moves in his head already. I spoke first. Use that local slang Dai helped me tweak over the last 2 days. I said, "You're early. I like that." He replied slow and simple. Used a basic version of his dialect so I would get it. He'd prepped for the language gap just like I did. Came to see what's what, he said. I was like, fair enough, get in here. We hit the council fire to talk. His 4, our 3 Kaido, Dai, Ken, me at the head. Everyone knew the deal. Goro watched from the side. Correct. Musashi dropped 3 big questions on me. First, the hardware. What are they? Where from? Can they be stopped? No fluff. Respect. A guy who asks straight wants real answers. I gave him the truth about the guns. Not the blueprints, obviously. No chemistry lessons. Just how they actually functioned. We built them right here using local junk and the knowledge our people have. We can make more. Lots more. If we have the time. He got the message. Second question. Why did you come out to meet us alone? I said because I wanted to talk, and walls get in the way. He asked if I'm scared. Terrified, I said. But the conversation was worth more than the risk of dying. He changed his mind about me. Not in a fuzzy way, just a mental recalculation. He called me a weigher, someone who does the math on life and death. Last question, the big one. What do you want? I said. Want to see our iron forge? He expected us to demand land or money, same old boring power moves. I offered him the secret sauce instead. Totally different game. Brain-melting stuff. I let him stew. Skipped the boring political logic. Let him crunch the numbers himself, it hits harder. Just gave him the practical pitch. Sending 2 of my pros over for 30 days. They'll teach his crew iron smelting. In 30 days, they're set. Our price? Don't touch our turf. Simple deal. No alliance. Not just yet. Trust takes time. Musashi goes, what if I keep your guys and just bail? I said, then you lose face and face the heat you saw in that funnel. The math on that? Totally sucks for you. He sat there. His crew didn't say a word, just watched his stone-cold face. 30 days, he said, nodding. Fine, I replied. I'm sending Tetsu. Tetsu, who had 0 clue this was happening, made a noise that meant like 6 things. I caught his eye. He got the vibe. Then he grunted, basically saying, fine. Kawa's already there, mentally listing every tool she's got to pack for the trip. Saw her hands twitching. The whole school thing started 3 days after Musashi left. It wasn't some grand design. It just happened because the need was right there and people stepped up. Musashi sent 12 people. No fighters, though. Just craftsmen and 2 young dudes who were hungry to learn and moved fast. They showed up day 4 with supplies and snacks. Low maintenance, self-sufficient guests. Musashi actually thought about the logistics. Tetsu saw their rocks and whispered, this is weird cassiterite. I need to know the source. I told him to just ask them. He can talk, right? He and I were grinding on the local slang since the deal because Tetsu wanted to teach. Within 24 hours, the forge was basically running itself. No orders needed. Tetsu was the star, showing the smelting with that super intense focus he has. Kawa was over by the rocks, checking out what the visitors brought. Her hands moved over every piece, the most reliable quality check we have. Musashi's boys watched every single step like hawks. They knew this info was straight up gold. Ken had already fixed the roof 2 days before they even showed up. Nobody even asked him to. He saw the crowd coming and just handled the space problem. I noticed that. Sora's workshop swallowed 3 visitors in the first week. No help from me. 2 women and an old guy were lurking by the pots on day 2. They had that specific pro stance, just calibrating the massive gap between their skills and hers. Sora clocked them for a minute, then just waved them inside. By lunch, they were already prepping clay. Sora was teaching without even trying. Then this older dude showed her a clay trick she'd never seen. She watched him do it 3 times real slow before trying it herself. Her next batch was perfect. No air bubbles at all. Total game changer. I watched from the sidelines and thought, yeah, this is how it should be. Not a one-way street. Knowledge was flowing both ways. It wasn't a classroom, just people sharing skills and vibing without needing some boring curriculum. By week 2, the settlement was bursting at the seams. Total chaos. Ken brought it up on day 11 with his usual blunt attitude. Our space was built for 26 people, max. Functional density? Gone. Now we got 38 people inside and way more coming if the plan works. We either live in our own filth or push the walls out. Ken already had the blueprints ready, of course the overachiever did. The second ring of walls would stretch our turf out 60 paces north and east. That adds about 200 square paces of extra breathing room. With everyone grinding, we are looking at a 3-week build. New spot means a second workshop for the clay slingers and a training field. Ken basically said we need a place to play with guns where people aren't trying to sleep. I gave the green light and told Kaido to round up the workers. We started digging the very next morning. Musashi's 2-star pupils joined the crew before the first day was even over. No one even asked. They just saw the hustle and jumped in. 3 weeks post-battle, morning hits. The forge is screaming. The crew is sweating. The new wall in Sora's shop are officially a thing. She's already got enough ceramic orders from Musashi's crew to keep her busy until spring. I hit the battlements at sunrise to check our stash. Not just the gear, everything. We're at 41 people now. 3 newcomers showed up after hearing the rumors from Musashi's folks. Just a family. 2 adults, 4 kids. They had basically nothing but the clothes on their backs. Kin had them tucked into the new east wing before the mortar was even dry. Kaido checked them at the door and let them through. We did not ask them to prove they were worth it. They just started helping within 4 days. That is just how it goes here. Walls are out to a 190-pace perimeter now, 700 square paces of turf inside. The fighting deck goes all the way around now. Got the gate covered, and Kin made those west side reinforcements permanent. It does not look like a camp anymore. It looks like a city starting to wake up. The forge is running double shifts now that Tetsu's apprentices are actually doing their jobs. Tetsu still plays boss on quality control. He will be doing that until he drops dead. And honestly, probably after too. At least he does not have to babysit every single melt anymore. He is using his free time to mess with that weird iron rock Kawa found. He won't tell me what he is cooking up. He will show me when it is ready. Classic Tetsu. Pottery is booming. 48 jars a week with 4 workers, plus 3 more learning the ropes. Sora's flipped the workflow twice since the new hands arrived. Output shot up both times. She did not even bother asking for my permission. We have got an 11-week food stash. The fall harvest was way better than we hoped. Kin grew the grain silo by 1/3 back in the summer. Seemed like overkill then, but now, pure genius. Talking is getting easier. The language gap with Musashi's crew is shrinking fast. Dai is the main link, but a bunch of others know enough slang to build stuff together without a translator. It is not perfect, but it gets better every day. Weapons, 8 muskets, 1 big gun, 23 kilos of powder, and plenty of ammo. Goro's powder blessing is basically a monthly holiday now. The musket boys drill every 4 days. Dai runs the show now. I do not even have to watch. That is the now stuff. Then I started thinking about the not yet. The lathe. You need a lathe, a spinning piece of metal, a sharp tool. Without it, no precision. Without that precision, the barrel trick Kin came up with, it is fine for now, but it is the best we will ever get without the lathe. The lathe is the tool that births all other tools. It is the machine that makes civilization possible. After the lathe, power. Simple stuff, a generator, copper wire, an iron core spinning in a magnet. The math is easy. We have got the junk to build it. But you need a lathe to wind that wire tight. So, lathe first. Then electricity. Then radio. No more runners. No more guessing. Real-time info, not history lessons. After radio, the engine. A real motor. No more steam-powered compromises. Gasoline. Distilled cold. Pistons bored out perfect on that lathe. I have carried those cylinder specs in my head for 60 years. They are still there, just waiting. After the engine, we fly. Not a glider with a tea kettle strapped to it. A real plane. 2 seats, compass, the whole deal. The theory is stupid, simple. Just needs to stay up long enough to change everything. This is not just a seasonal plan. It is a revolution. This was the master plan for the next 10 years. I was 11, so I had forever. C found me on the deck while I was still running the mental math. She just plopped down right next to me without even asking, which was basically her default move. She spent a while staring at the northern tree line. The glider was finally back in one piece. Ken finished it 2 days ago and hand-checked the wing tension 3 times before saying it was good to go. She hadn't taken it up yet. She was waiting on something, but I played it cool and didn't ask. Then she goes, I spotted something on the flight, left it out of the report. I just looked at her. Dead serious. She said, way up northeast, past the Confederation spot. Smoke. Not campfires, something bigger and steady, like a forge, but a whole lot of them. I asked, how far? Can't be sure from that high up, she said. It was way further out than Musashi's main turf. I asked why she hid it. She went quiet for a sec. Then, battles in 3 days. Figured your plate was full enough. Saved it for later. Honestly, that was the smartest tactical move anyone in this dump had made without asking me first. She sorted the intel by what mattered right now and sat on the small stuff until the big drama was over. That wasn't just a gut feeling, that was straight up judgment. I told her, spill everything. She spent 4 minutes breaking it down. Non-stop smoke, multiple spots, all in a tight pattern. It wasn't messy like a bunch of cookouts. It was consolidated, the kind of industrial vibe you only see from the clouds. At that distance, she couldn't see the fine print, but the pattern was crystal clear. Someone past Musashi's border was producing stuff big time. When I grilled Musashi about his northern border during talks, he gave me some vague, careful non-answer. That classic I know exactly what is up but I am not telling you kind of dodge. I caught the vibe back then but kept moving because we had a whole battle to win first. Well, that problem is handled now. I sat on the edge with Sei and looked northeast, thinking about what mass production meant here. Tons of metal, ceramics, maybe food processing. Each one changes the game, but they all mean one thing, a crew way bigger and more organized than anyone I have met yet. Musashi is a smart guy. He took my deal because the math worked in his favor. Simple as that. But smart guys always update their math the second the info changes. I had to know what was northeast of him before he decided to tell me or keep it a secret. I looked at the glider. C caught my drift. She said, I can get more air this time. The boiler is solid. Ken says the wing is better than before the crash. I asked how much higher. She told me maybe 30 or 40 meters if the morning heat is right. 30 more meters up. At 4 kilometers out, that is a huge boost to what she can see. 5 or 6 clicks? Might be enough to see the factory directly. I told her, give me 3 days. I got a chat with Musashi first. She just nodded and stood up. She took one last look northeast, the kind of look she uses to lock a target in her brain. Then she hopped off to find Ken. I chilled up there until the smoke from our own forge started rising and the whole settlement began waking up around me. 41 people. 11 weeks of food, metal, gunpowder, and a flying machine under repair. Plus a deal with a guy who has 300 soldiers and decided we were worth more alive than dead. And right past him, a whole factory town nobody mentioned. I have the entire history of human tech inside my head. The lathe, electricity, radio, engines, mass-produced meds, a legit airplane, all the high-end gear that comes next. I have been stuck in this world for 11 years now. I have basically speed-run 200 years of tech since I got here. But honestly, it is not enough. It is just the start. I headed down to find Musashi's translator for a talk I bet he was also waiting for. The forge was already hot. The village was humming. C is heading northeast in 3 days. And whatever is churning out that smoke at the edge of the world, they have zero clue someone is coming for a look.